It's Tipperary versus Kilkenny. Let's drink some whiskey. Okay, if you're into hurling, you kind of would or should get that joke. And if you don't know what hurling is, well, it's regarded as the fastest and oldest field sport in the world. And Kilkenny just happened to be the best at it. Up the Cats. But today, it's not about the sport. It's about this amazing new-ish boutique distillery making some big noise in the whiskey world. Welcome to Whiskey and Whiskey. I'm the Whiskey Chaser Brian, coming to you from Christie's Bar in Kilkenny. And this is the Tipperary Boutique Homegrown Barley Single Cask Release. Another single cask and another cask strength video today. Life is surely very good for the chaser. And a relatively new distillery, Tipperary, have been in the game since roughly 2014, where for the majority of time since then, they've been mainly independent bottlers of fine spirits with an impressive number of small batch and single cask releases to date. They're big fans of the single casks. If we jump to November of 2020 and the new Tipperary distillery at Ballindoney Farm began distilling its very own whiskey with barley that has been grown on the Ahern family farm upon which the distillery sits. Tipperary then is made up of Jennifer Nickerson, Stuart Nickerson and Liam Ahern, a trifecta of entrepreneurial, distilling and agricultural might that have come together to bring us whiskey that hasn't been produced in Tipperary for over 100 years. If my research is correct, that is. So this is their first homegrown single estate, single malt Irish whiskey. It wasn't distilled on their farm, but it does use all of their own barley, which was grown on the estate. To date, we are seeing a number of different grain to glass single farm estate releases, which is just a testament to how big the industry is becoming. And it is lovely to see that. What's even lovelier to see is this is a family-run business with quality and transparency at the core. Jennifer Nickerson is the CEO, while Father Stuart brings with him years of distilling experience, having honed and mastered his craft throughout many famous distilleries in Scotland. It was only natural then for Jennifer to eventually want to come away from her accountant firm to start her own distillery, with help setting up from her father Stuart, an agricultural specialist who also happens to be her husband, Liam, on his family farm. So Ballindoney Farm has been in Liam's family for generations and is a 100% tillage farm. That means there's no animals. On this farm, they sow, grow and harvest their very own barley for their whiskey, soon to be grain to glass as whiskey they have distilled is currently maturing on their farm. This release here was distilled at another distillery using all their own grain and Stuart overseeing the entire operation. I should mention it was an Irish distillery, of course, that their grain was distilled in. One thing that I think that is of particular importance here is the distillery's belief and interest in terroir. Terroir is a French term used to describe the environmental factors that affect a crop's phenotype, including unique environmental contexts, farming practices, and a crop's specific growth habitat. And this is not the first time that we've seen this. We have seen this before with Waterford's interest in the practice, and they have spent an enormous amount of time and money researching all the factors that go into whiskey production, from temperature and soil characteristics to use of barley types, yeast types, fermentation times, etc., all derived around one final outcome, which is do all these factors contribute to a better tasting product. Now, some people are very much on the fence with all of this, some flat out deny it altogether, and some people, myself included, think this is a very intriguing concept. However, in my own opinion, there are one or two caveats to that which I won't get into in this video, but I do have questions, which I'm going to save for another video some other time further down the road, much further, when I understand it all a little bit better. And perhaps somebody else has answered the question for me. So why mention terroir? Well, firstly, you have to look at the packaging here. It's very futuristic, it's very clean, one would say even a little bit minimalistic. It's cool, but the power to this bottle here lies on the labeling. A very detailed and broken down accord of the barley type used, the date sown, the field it was grown in, along with the batch ID and the wood used for maturation. If you flip it over and the back label reveals even more information on the growing, the malting, distilling, maturing, and bottling that the whiskey underwent itself. There is a lot of info on the label and clearly shows the amount of work that went into gathering all of this up and keeping track of it all for the discerning whiskey drinker. Is it a little nerdy? Absolutely it is. But I'm guessing that if you're into whiskey, then you're partial to a bit of nerdiness from time to time. I'll of course leave all of the info in the description down below, as well as links to the distillery itself so you can check it all out in your own time. There's a lot to get through. There is a QR code on the back of this bottle that when scanned will open up a page in your web browser that is full to the max of way more information on the bottles, packaging, maturation. It's incredible just how much info is there to be read. Again, I will leave that link down below so you can check it out for yourself. It's pretty awesome. And now, the whiskey. A Kilkenny man drinking Tipperary whiskey. I'll be fair. Tough, but fair. Okay, so the whiskey. Again, this is a single cask whiskey from Tipperary Boutique Distillery. Non-age statement, 50% ABV, single malt whiskey matured in first fill ex-Rioja oak casks. Non-chill filtered, no coloring or additives used. A total of 5 casks and roughly about €85. It kind of puts you up there a touch north of some of the Waterford Distillery releases, and you can make your own mind up on value in that terms, but the packaging was designed in Carlow and is 100% recyclable and manufactured from sustainable sources. I like seeing stuff like that. Okay, so on the nose, firstly, getting a big spice hit. Obviously a non-age statement, and this is the terroir belief is behind this, so it's going to get barley forward. And there is a kind of fruity sweetness to it, and red fruits. Like, the first thing that comes to my mind is strawberry. And that kind of fruit vibe is staying there on the nose. There's a little bit of a toasted note going on in this, which is quite interesting. It's not very obvious. It is somewhat young, but I'm gonna reserve my opinion for the end. There is a little bit of that spirity essence to it, but it works well with the barley and the red fruit spice. Let's have a little taste. Let's launch it. Straight away, strawberry sweetness. Quite oily. A lot oilier than I was expecting. You're getting that toasted kind of barley note. Very robust. There's like a cinnamon spice to it, lingers a tiny bit. It's very warming, but not overpowering. It doesn't really be the first thing that gets you, is that overpoweringness. It's the creaminess, it's the fruitiness, you know, and it kind of almost like there's a bit of caramel in it. Second time, barley is lovely. It is quite sweet. A little bit more caramel. Kind of, even a hint, very, very mentholy type hint to it there somewhere. Again, warming, but creamy. It's interesting. Finish then, you have that lovely sweetness carries through and the toasted notes. Plenty of heat, hanging around for a nice bit, not overpowering, but there's a slightly bitter note to it. It is dancing nicely with the nose and the palate. I'm guessing that bitter note is coming a bit more from the Rioja casks used. There's nothing too out of place. The sweetness is all still there. Before I give you my thoughts, if you liked any of that video or my notes on the whiskey, give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. And if you do that, you may as well turn on the notifications bell for the videos. You'll be kept well up to speed on all the latest releases and information behind some of the finest Irish whiskies produced in the world. You are welcome. So, my ending and therefore my thoughts on this. Firstly, it's a non-age statement. Now, I don't particularly think this drinks as young as it might be. I think it drinks a whole lot better than one would imagine it to be. The sweetness of this is lovely and it's very fresh and not as wild as, again, one might think. When I saw the Rioja cask finish, I thought it was going to be very bitter, but it was the opposite. Lovely and sweet with just a bare hint of bitter on the end. Overall, I think this is a very good whiskey and it's also headed in the right direction. Touch on the pricey side, but when you look at all the information and what they are doing at the distillery, one could nearly say the €85 is justifiable. but that's just my opinion. I do love the whole terroir belief system here. I love the fact that this was better than I was expecting, and I love that it's open here in Christie's if anybody ever wanted to come and try it. As a side note, I should say this again, as in all of my videos, I'm not endorsed or sponsored by anyone. This bottle belongs to the bar here, and all thoughts are my own. I did rather enjoy this today. I can't wait to see more of what Tipperary are doing. I think the future is very bright for them, and maybe keep an eye on my Instagram for something special that is coming soon. For me, and maybe here. I'm not gonna say any more about it, but we might be working on something. Thanks again to the lads here at Christie's. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure. I must go now and figure out what whiskey I'll be doing next week. Until then, Chaser out. Sláinte.